Welcome back to the channel. I'm Zuko the Flame Prince, back with another video. And before I jump into it, the first thing you'll notice is that compared to my other videos, there's no actual footage of my face in this one. That's because in this video and the series of tier list videos I plan to make after this probably won't have my face cam in it, because when it comes to exporting of my videos, that can double, sometimes quadruple the time of the export. And because these videos aren't that long, I don't think it's necessary to see my face. Plus, I'm trying to speedrun this. This is the first of a series of videos I'll be putting out where, in preparation for my reaction to Absol's Herbert album, I basically went through his entire discography from Long Term 1 all the way through Do What Thou Wilt. And I did so with the goal of I did it firstly with the goal of priming myself for the album. But once I was done, I figured, yo, why don't I just go ahead and rank his discography while I'm at it. So that brings us to today's video, where I'll be starting with his first project, Long Term 1, the mixtape, which was released in 2009. This is actually one of the earliest Absol projects I heard, although I heard it around 2 to 3 years later, in like 2011, 2012. And I wasn't even in high school yet, but that was around the same time that I discovered Kendrick Lamar and TDE and all of them. So I really grew up on TDE. And up until To Pimp a Butterfly, I was convinced that Absol was the best rapper of TDE. But since To Pimp a Butterfly and Good Kid, Mad City, really, Kendrick's albums continue to get better and more mind-blowing for me, while Absol's ones seem to sort of stagnate in terms of, I guess, quality. But anyway, I don't want this intro to be too long-winded. But yeah, the first track on this song was Introduction. Felt as though that was a great song. And also, you'll notice that the tiers on the side are actually slightly different. If you saw my Jay-Z video where I was doing his tier list, now it's more numerical than qualitative. But I know it's still hard to quantify because it's still a subjective list at the end of the day. But differentiating between amazing and great for me proved a bit challenging when I was sitting with myself on the definition of those terms. So here I tried to, as I listened to the songs, basically whatever score I felt the song was out of 10, that's how I determined my rubric. And also, because Absol is one of my favorite rappers of all time, even though I have C, D, and F tier, there won't be many songs that land there, just because I am a big fan of his discography. There might be songs that end up in C or D later on, but in this project, this is one of my favorite Absol projects, so that's unlikely. But yeah, running through them if you can't see. S tier song is for 10 out of 10 plus. The A plus is for a song that's a 9 out of 10. A is for 8 out of 10. B is for 7 out of 10. C is for 6 out of 10. D is for 5 out of 10. And then F is for anything below 5. But yeah, with that out the way, we can actually jump into it. Alright, but as I was saying, the introduction to the project I felt as though was a great introduction to Absol, stylistically as well as who he is as a person. I feel as though that was a great opening. That was an 8 out of 10 record. He followed that up with Lyrically Speaking, which I also gave an 8 out of 10. And then Regular Nigga, which is one of my favorite Absol songs. That song was a 9 out of 10. A Day in the Life, also one of my favorites. I was deliberating between giving it a 9 or 10 out of 10, but then I also had to think about other Absol songs that aren't on this project, and I don't think it quite matches up compared to his other songs that I think are 10 out of 10s. So I gave it a 9. 100 Yard Dash was another great song that I gave an 8 out of 10. Oh, and within the tiers, I'm not going to be ranking these songs amongst themselves. Let that be too much admin. These tiers are essentially just ballparks of where I think the songs land in my enjoyment of them. But yeah, the 6th track on the project was Blowing Them Horns. Initially, before I added the numerical value, I'd had this as B tier song, but then B tier didn't necessarily equate to 7 at the time. It was anything between 7 and 8. Once I assigned the numerical value of 8 to A, that sort of took the song and put it in that tier. Gada featuring J-Rock. The beat itself was probably the best part of the song. I listened to it now and I was trying to, I guess, judge it based off Absol's performance, and there it was one of the weaker performances, even though the song itself bangs from a, I guess, content standpoint. Not that that's too much of a factor. It bangs harder than some of these songs, but I don't think I enjoy it more. Oh shit, I skipped the features. Regular Nigga, which is track 3, was featuring Big Pooh. That's this track over here, my first 8 tier track. Gada is featuring J-Rock. That's this track over here. I think those are the only 2 features so far. I'm a G featuring Glasses Malone and Schoolboy Q. I gave that song a 9 out of 10. If it was about content, really it would kind of contradict having Gotta down here, but I felt as though it's basically the same song as Gotta, except executed better, I feel, and Glasses Malone and Schoolboy Q both performed better than J-Rock. Run the Show, track 9. I had Run the Show as another 7 out of 10 track. And then Watch Your Lady featuring Kendrick Lamar. That was another track that I gave a 9 out of 10. I really liked them. This is back in the early days of TDE when them going back and forth with one another was a pretty common thing, whether it's Kendrick and J-Rock or Absol and Kendrick. So yeah, I gave that song a 9 out of 10. Track 11, Mr. Absolutely. I gave that song an 8 out of 10, but it's like either 8 out of 10 or like borderline 7. Studio Life is another track. I think 8 is definitely, compared to the lower tiers, the higher tiers are gonna be more bloated because, as I mentioned before, I'm a fan of this artist. But also I think 8 is sort of like my safe spot for most songs. So if I enjoy the song but I don't think it's the greatest thing I've ever heard, it'll most likely end up in A tier. In other tier lists, that would normally be a B, but that B wouldn't equal 7 as in this one. That's just to explain why my 8 tier is gonna be so bloated anyway. Studio Life, also another track that was an 8 out of 10 for me, an enjoyable listen, but nothing too mind-blowing. And then Me and Miss Payne, this is track 13 on the project. It's one of my favorite Absol songs and verses. Also Punch, by seeing popping up on some of these songs of Absol, and then he just drops such memorable verses all the time and then just disappears. With that a 10 out of 10. This tier list is basically like if somebody had to put a gun on my head and was like, give me songs for why I think Absol is a great MC. That's basically what the songs that go into 10 out of 10 are going to be. Like Life on the Line, I would suggest these songs. And there aren't a lot of those in most artists' discography. The track Absol, I had that as a 7 out of 10. Even though the album is very consistent, the mixtape is very consistent, I do think it's one of the weaker songs on there. But it's also not like a 6 out of 10 song, I don't think, by my rankings, unless of course I'm being too generous. Following Absol is the track titled Life is Crazy. I think this was another 8 out of 10 song that was very enjoyable. I think I more than Mr. Absolutely, but as I said, I'm not ranking these amongst themselves within a tier. Wait, I might be missing a song. Yeah, there's 17 images, but there's 18 songs on the project, so I'm not sure which song I'm missing. Solo I have as another perfect S tier song on the project. Also one of my favorite Absol songs that I'd 100% recommend to anyone. Before that was Long Term, and this was an 8 out of 10 record. And then the bonus track on the project was The Notch featuring members of The Notch, I believe. This was also 7 out of 10. That's basically what the tier list would look like. I want to quickly reset it and count my pictures to see if I have enough, but I'm gonna put them back in their place anyway. Alright, I'm not gonna make you sit through me putting all of these back together, but yeah, I'll see you guys on the other side. And I'm back. So I figured out the song that was missing from my track list here as the song titled Absol, and I had that song as a 7 out of 10, so that would be down here as well. I think as an entire song, even though I liked it as a concept, one of the weaker songs overall on the project. So to recap, we have in S tier, which are 10 out of 10 songs from this project, Me and Miss Payne featuring Punch, as well as Solo. And then in A tier, which are 9 out of 10 songs on the project, we have Regular Nigga featuring Big Pooh, A Day in the Life, I'm a G featuring Schoolboy Q and Glasses Malone, and then Watch Your Lady featuring Kendrick Lamar. The A tier, also the 8 out of 10 tier, which is the most bloated as you can see. This was like my safe zone for songs that I actually enjoy, but I don't think are the greatest things I've ever heard. We have the introduction, Lyrically Speaking, 100-Yard Dash, Blowing Them Horns, Mr. Absolutely, Studio Life, Long Term, and Life is Crazy. Coincidentally, it's funny that none of these songs have any features. I think that's a pretty interesting thing to know. So when Soul carries a song by himself, he usually ends up with the 8 out of 10, which is a good result in my books. And then Gotta is him featuring J-Rock in the 7 out of 10 tier. And then Run the Show was Solo by himself, 7 out of 10. And then The Notch is featuring other members of, I assume, like his old clique, outside of TDE, like a clique he had. But yeah, that's been my tier list for Absol's first mixtape, Long Term 1, released in 2009. totaling up all the scores that I gave them, the project ended up with an average score of 8.2, and I think that's very decent for an artist's first project. It'll be interesting as I go along with this to see how, in my own opinion, Ab-Soul's projects either improve or decline from the starting point. But yeah, with that out the way, that's been my tier list. I'm gonna leave a link if you guys are interested so that you can have your own tier list. So I'm gonna leave that in the description, and I'm also going to leave a link so that you guys can actually listen to the project here on YouTube as well. But with that out the way, I've been Zuka the Flame Prince. If you enjoyed this tier list and these type of videos, please go ahead and smash the like button, smash subscribe, and share this video with any other fans of Ab-Soul you may know. And if you think there's another artist whose discography I should also get into that isn't, because I already have a couple artists planned, which are just a couple artists that I grew up on really, excluding Jay-Z because I've already done his entire discography, but it would be like other artists that I really enjoyed growing up. I plan to do this for those as well. This is basically going to be Ab-Soul exclusive for the next, I don't know, week or two. Once I'm done with all of these tier lists, then I'll do my reaction to his album Herbert, which at this point has been out for just over a month, I think. For someone who's one of my favorite artists, you'd think I'd listen to it immediately, but I've been holding off because I really wanted to capture my reaction on film, essentially. With that out the way, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.